Hello and welcome to another edition of Tuesdays with a Disability Policy for All. I'm really excited to be interviewing Judy Heumann, who I look up to. She's a senior fellow of the Ford Foundation and a longtime disability advocate. So welcome, Judy.
Very nice to be with you, Liz, and I need to say that I equally admire you and the great work that you've done for so many years.
Thank you. The first question is, can you share with the audience about the time that you fought to be included in school?
So really briefly, this was in the 1950s when there were no laws like the Americans with Disabilities Act that made it illegal to discriminate against someone who had a disability. So I lived in Brooklyn and my mother took me to the local neighborhood school. And there were steps in the school and it wasn't accessible, but my mother was going to carry me up and down the steps and she would help me in the bathroom, whatever I needed. But the principal said I couldn't go to that school because it wasn't accessible. So that basically meant that I had a teacher, a home instruction teacher, who came to my house for literally 2.5 hours a week. And for the first grade, second grade, third grade, and half the fourth grade. Then I went to school, but it was only in segregated classes. So it wasn't until I went to high school that I began to be integrated into school with non-disabled children. I think it's very important that families have children integrated very early because it was very difficult for me to become integrated into a regular school with 30, 35 kids in a classroom when I came from an environment with myself at home when I was getting home instruction, and then when I went to special classes which had like 8 to 10 children.
Thank you. And that's so interesting. The next question is, I know you have done a lot of work around the world, and the question is, what are your thoughts around the inclusion of people with disability in other countries?
So principally, I believe it's very important that disabled and non-disabled people are integrated in society. And in many countries, in Africa and Asia and Europe, some degree still in the United States, and others, disabled children are not going to school with non-disabled children. In many countries, disabled children don't go to school at all. So it's very important that, like the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, which is something that the United Nations adopted in 2006, now has more than 173 countries from around the world that have said yes, they want to implement this Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. That is very important to help ensure that over time, disabled children will not only be going to school, but will be going to school more with non-disabled children. It's very important because people need to know that we are all equal, and I believe that education is very important for disabled and non-disabled children. It's not only giving academic information, like learning to read and write and math, but it's also allowing people to learn that we're the same and that we need to be good to everybody.
Okay, thank you. And the next question and the last question is, why do you think that the United States hasn't ever ratified the CDRP?
I think it's very unfortunate that the United States has not ratified because the Americans with Disabilities Act, which is now 27 years old, has been considered to be like one of the most important laws in the world. We haven't ratified it, I think, because of politics. I think there are people who don't want to support this because it's a United Nations agreement. But I think for people in the United States, it's very important, not because it's going to change that much in the United States, but it will allow disabled people in the United States to have opportunities overseas to study, to work, to travel. And it will also allow those of us in the United States to more freely be able to talk about the laws that we have and how they're working and how they're not working, and help people learn to do things which can help open doors.
Okay, thank you. And see you next week. Have a nice day. Thanks again, Judy.
Thanks so much.
What does implementation mean?
So I think simply said, implementation means doing something that you agreed to do. I think that's the simplest thing. You agreed to do something. In the case of the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, a government agrees that they will implement, like, the right to education, and in implementing that means that disabled children will actually be able to go to school, and the government will take responsibility to ensure that happens.
Okay, thank you.